What's poppin', everybody? This is Wolf94, and today I'm gonna be reviewing Bloodstained Ritual of the Night for the PlayStation 4. I've beaten the game today and did just about everything you can do. My map is 99.70%. I think there might be like a hidden room I didn't check out just yet, but I've done everything, beaten all the optional bosses, beaten the game, got the good ending, all the bad endings, whatever. The only thing I haven't done yet is fight Iga, because they still haven't given us the backer DLC. I'm a backer for this game, and for the PlayStation 4 that I played it, they still haven't given us the DLC, but anyway, that's a story for a different time. So I'm gonna break the review down to 6 categories. I'm gonna talk about the graphics, the sound, the story, the gameplay, controls, and replay value, and then give my final verdict. So I'm gonna tell you guys right now that this is gonna be it won't be a spoiler-free review. I do plan to spoil a lot of things in the story. I'm gonna leave that till last, but just so you guys know, here's your warning right now. So for a brief summary, if you don't know, if you're completely clueless about this kind of a game, Bloodstained is a 2.5 side-scrolling platformer, heavy with action and heavy with RPG elements. It was a Kickstarter game, and it was a great success. It took a long time to make, and it's got a lot of bad things and a lot of good things, mostly good things, but I do have a few bad things to say about it. So first and foremost, we got to talk about the graphics. So graphically, the game, I would say it's very good for what they were trying to do. I would give it like an 8 out of 10, maybe 8.5 out of 10. I think 8 out of 10 is the right score. Now, a lot of people I've been hearing, even after all the improvements they made, that they think the graphics are still shit. I think people must be pretty high on crack or something to be saying stuff like this. For what they were trying to do, which was use Unreal Engine and make a 3D game and adjust it to that 2D feel, giving us that 2D gameplay feel. That's basically what they were trying to do, and it just worked out fine, in my opinion. Now, don't get me wrong, I do believe that if they went with something like HD sprites, I would prefer them any day of the week. Like if this game, let's say, was like how Audience Sphere for the PlayStation 4, if you're familiar with that, or Muramasa Rebirth, if it had taken that approach with HD quality artistic sprites, I would have preferred that for sure. But you can't say the game is graphically bad. Now, it's not perfect because I do think that the characters, the way they look when they talk, like when there's just text cutscenes going on and you talk, then they don't look that good, to be honest. But other than that, the game is very pretty. Really just high fidelity graphics. Everything looks really nice. Characters, enemies, the weapons. Just a lot of the backgrounds are really cool, and there were a lot of benefits of going with the sort of 3D, making this game in 3D 2.5. I'm gonna talk about that later in gameplay though. Okay, so sound. Now music is Michiru Yamane, of course, and even at her worst, she's great. Now I'm not saying this is a terrible soundtrack, but to be honest, I don't know. I think like if I think about a soundtrack like Order of Ecclesias, Symphony of the Night, even Portrait of Ruin, just all these games, I could just listen to the whole thing and I'll like every song. This Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, I would say maybe like, let's say, a little bit more than half of the tracks are top-notch, and I really enjoy listening to them on my PC. And other ones are a bit weaker, a bit more forgettable. It's still really good, but I think she could have done definitely much better. It definitely doesn't have that sort of majesty and amazingness that Symphony of the Night had. It didn't top it in that regard. I feel like it just seems like it was also missing some sort of slightly groovy songs, you could say. There's a few tracks in Symphony of the Night and other games that have some sort of groove into them as well, but I think this one was kind of, there's too many violins, I believe, and it's just a bit too mellow. I just think it needed a little bit more beat, a little bit more bass here and there. It was kind of missing that. But sound very good. I would give it I think an 8 or a 9 maybe out of 10 again. I'm not quite sure. I'm doing this on top of my head. I do have, like, I gathered my thoughts for this review, but it's not scripted, like I said. So maybe an 8 or a 9 out of 10. Right. Next up, we're going to talk about gameplay. Now, this is the big thing. So, gameplay. This game is basically plays just like Symphony of the Night and the other games that Koji Igarashi made and is kind of famous for. You run around, kill monsters with your character, and you have a lot of weapons to choose from. You can do a lot of crafting in this game. There's a lot of RPG elements like that. Enemies drop different materials, and you can find lots of different items and materials, and you combine them into weapons, armor, other accessories, and gear to power up your character. You level up, you find new abilities. Because all of the enemies have shards, which are basically like the souls, if you're familiar with other Castlevania games, or like the glyphs, you absorb those powers, you have a chance to absorb those powers, and then you gain their techniques and their abilities. And you always have a lot of variety when it comes to how you want to play your character. In past games, like in the Dawn of Sorrow and Aria of Sorrow, you could use guns, but they didn't really do much with them. They were just sort of there, just a few guns. In Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, every weapon class has a lot of emphasis to it. Even the pistols, you actually have bullets and you can load your gun. There's a lot of different types of bullets, and you got rapiers, you got swords, you got katanas if you want to go like a Japanese, samurai dude. And they function kind of differently. There's slow weapons, fast weapons, more defensive weapons, just everything. Okay, so one of my gripes though with this game is that the crafting system just isn't completely right, I think. The way it is that it seems you get a lot of materials and you can't really use them. It's like you have a lot of shit you can't use. It's kind of difficult to figure out what you are able to craft and what you kind of need to get, so that, okay, I need to get these sort of materials to do this and craft this so I can craft the other bigger thing. So it's just kind of, it's a bit complicated, a bit sort of messy. The way it was in Curse of Darkness, I think it was kind of better, to be honest. Of course, they needed to... It's fine that they wanted to make it more in-depth, but I think it's kind of messy in a way. Especially with the food items, it just seems like I was getting all these cooking materials, all this stuff, and I could barely make any, food. Just different types of food. I've beaten through the game, I've done everything there is to do. I had to go back and forth to get secret items and secret areas and do a lot of different shit. So I had the chance to loot a lot of enemies and, gather food. And it just seems like you just gotta go out of your way to loot everything, even after you beat the game. And there's no point. It's like you don't have the items and everything to go through the story, to go through the game, if that makes sense. So the other bad thing, these are more technical things, is that this game does have a few glitches and it is kind of buggy. For example, even on the PlayStation 4 version that I played, which is supposed to be the best one, I think, when enemies drop items, little materials and stuff, sometimes if you kill them in the air, the bag of the item is kind of stuck there in air, and it just sits there until it disappears. You can still sort of touch it and jump all the time there, and as long as you touch it when it disappears, you're still gonna get the item. But this is definitely a bug. It wasn't meant to work like that. Unfortunately, another bad thing is that the game does have some big loading times, especially when you die. This game is super easy. I'm gonna talk about that a bit later, but I immediately played it in Nightmare mode, which is the most difficult mode. You're stuck at level 1, you don't level up. So even when you're fighting enemies that are level 50 and shit, you're still level 1. It's difficult, it's doable because I did beat the game in the end. With the loot that you get and the strong weapons, you can kind of mitigate that and the healing items. But I did die a lot, and every time you die, the loading time is really big until you get back in the game. Also, when you go through different rooms, their loading times just sort of happen. In previous Igavania games, this didn't happen at all, and I know this is sort of a big console game, but still, I think there's just a bit too many especially after a big loading time, when you get into another room and then it loads again for 10 seconds or 8 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever. I think it's kind of annoying. The game also lags sometimes. I've experienced lag like when an item is gonna drop, or when you're gonna collect a shard, when a shard is gonna come to you. The game will lag for a few seconds, and just lag in general sometimes. And that's a bit annoying, especially when you're playing in a boss fight or something intense is going on. You don't want that to sort of throw you off. Another kind of drawback I have with the game is that I think there's not enough monsters. The whole bestiary, the sort of monster Pokédex you could say of the game, is 127, I believe, or 126. I suppose I don't have Iga since the DLC isn't up for us for PlayStation 4. But it's give or take around 126, 127 monsters, including the bosses, which I don't think is enough. A game like Order of Ecclesia had exactly, I believe, 120 monsters or something, and Portrait of Ruin and Dawn of Sorrow, I think, even went over that, especially Symphony of the Night. So I think it's a bit disappointing. It also kind of sucks that a few of the enemies are just, you know, there's 3 or I think 4 different types of cat enemies, and it's pretty much they are pretty much like cats with demon horns, and that's it. A few dog enemies too. You know, a few of the sprites are a bit recycled, but that's a given in these kinds of games when you have the regular demon and then the upgraded demon, what have you. But I feel like a lot of enemies were left out, that we could have gotten some different variety. For example, a big disappointment is that there weren't no golem enemies. Past Igavania games had a few different types of golems. We didn't have any sort of golems in here. A lot of the elemental demons are missing too. Just a few enemies could have used a bit more work, I would say. There's a good variety of enemies, some good original creations, and they're based on some sort of like the Demons of Solomon or something. But I feel like a few more enemies would be good. A few more variety of enemies. Other than that, you know, the game plays really fun despite all the drawbacks that I've said. It's fun to go around the castle killing enemies, collecting stuff, and exploring everything. If you like 2D games, I would say this game would be perfect for you. A few of the bosses are pretty mediocre when it comes to their design and how they play, but most of them are really top-notch compared to other Igavania games too. And because this game is technically 3D and they adjusted it into 2.5 for that 2.5 feel, there are instances in bosses where the area and how you fight them is different than usual, and they managed to imply a lot of those effects and gameplay mechanics that normally you wouldn't be able to do if the game wasn't 3D or 2.5D. So that was pretty cool. There were like some dragons that you fought in a really cool way. A certain NPC, I guess I'm not going to name him, that you run around in a circle, you gotta fight him, he runs around, and it's pretty cool. And just a lot of different things, because the game is 2.5 and 3D in its nature, that was possible because of this. So that's pretty good. Now, when it comes to controls, Iga is always sort of adamant about the control of the main character, and Miriam is the only playable character so far. We're supposed to have 3 of them, but I've only played with Miriam. I don't think the other ones are available anyway. She plays really fine. You certainly have control over her, and you can change some of the controls too in the menu, I believe. If you want to attack with a different button, or you want to use a spell with a different button, you can do and adjust all these things. So that's really good when the game gives you that option. I guess a bad thing I could say about controls, and this falls into gameplay too, is that because of its 3D nature though, a lot of the times you don't exactly know, like let's say you can't really read attacks in a precise manner. Maybe I'm bad and maybe it makes perfect sense for some people, but you know, just sometimes I felt like I just couldn't read what was going to happen, or like I thought I was going to dodge an attack and I didn't, or I wasn't sure, that kind of thing. Okay. And last but not least, the story, and this is probably my biggest gripe with the whole game. So, the story in this game is, I mean, story was never big in Igavania games, and that's not to say that the concept is shitty. Iga usually just has, good story ideas and, good narrative, but the execution is kind of half-assed, or I don't know, they just don't give a lot of focus on it. Okay, so my problem with the story is that, Iga, he doesn't just recycle his gameplay formula, which is great. He kind of recycles the story in a way too. The story feels to me sort of like a shittier Lament of Innocence story in a way, with the final villain, Dominique. And I'm just gonna assume you guys played the game and aren't spoiled to the story if you're watching this. I just want to give my thoughts on the story, but the characters, like the village, the whole village thing with the missions you do, which is pretty much from Order of Ecclesia, was executed so much better in that game, Order of Ecclesia. The villagers, the few villagers that you have, and you can do quests or missions for them, they're really soulless. Like in Order of Ecclesia, once you completed one of the quests and one of the missions, the characters, told you different things, and in general, they just had more things to say and make different conversations with you. In Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, they just say the same shit, and that's it. Besides the sort of first time you talk to them, where they say some different shit, then the rest of the time you just make quests, and even when you do all the quests, they don't say anything different. Like I did all of the quests for the monster killings for Lindsay, Lindsay, however you say her name, and when you talk to her, she doesn't even acknowledge that. I don't think you even get a trophy for doing all of the quests and missions, for her anyway. So, that was a bit sad. It makes the characters feel kind of soulless, for one. The other thing is that, Gebel is supposed to be like the main villain in this game, or like the sort of the Dracula sort of guy. Even though this isn't Castlevania, he was kind of like the Dracula guy, with the cape, and he's dressed kind of like a vampire and what have you, the boss of the castle, until you get the true ending. But he literally has just 3 sentences throughout the whole game for his story. Like before we played the game and with all the trailers and stuff, I was in a way hyped up that this guy was important in the story, in the game, but he was completely disappointing. Story-wise, he's good, he's a good guy in the end, but he just had 3 sentences, literally, just 3 sentences of dialogue, and that's it. Nothing happened. We didn't even, get like a flashback or when they were kids and the stuff Miriam was saying about him. A bit sad. Dominique, the same thing. Like, she's the main sort of villain in the end, like the traitor and stuff. She's kind of a psycho bitch. I really like her, to be honest, because I always have a thing for psycho chicks. It's just, anyway, let's not get into that, but okay. The bad thing about her is that she's supposed to have some sort of a motive for why she's doing things. It's like her parents died, and like God didn't intervene, and this is why she kind of wants to kill God or go above God. The kind of shit from Lament of Innocence. I guess I'm gonna spoil that game too, with Matthias in a way, but it's just executed so much worse compared to Lament of Innocence, and we don't even get anything. Like, even when she dies, she doesn't say anything, and we don't get to feel her pain or really feel her when it comes to why she's so mad. Really she's mad and wants to use the demon's power to become stronger and go above God and shit, whatever the fuck. So that was pretty disappointing. When it comes to the voice acting, which I think I should have covered that in sound, to be honest. I played the game in Japanese first, and I started playing it in English now on normal mode, just to get all the trophies. It's pretty solid, to be honest. Once again, there's a few glitches. Sometimes when you talk to a villager, or sometimes when characters talk, text is skipped, or I'm not sure if voice is skipped too. I didn't experience that yet, but just another sort of glitch when they talk. But voice acting in general is good, is solid, is okay. I was a bit disappointed. We didn't get like voice actors like Crispin Freeman or some of those really Castlevania like voice actors. Would have been really good. But I've enjoyed the Japanese voice acting. The English so far also seems very nice, and it's just pretty standard. Sound effects too, I kind of skipped over them. Good, nothing really spectacular to say about that. Everything just feels great. So overall verdict, what should we give this game? I'd give it like an 8 or something. I think the thing is with this game is that it's big, and the scale, they definitely were aiming high when they made this, but even as with all the content that it has, and they didn't even release the DLC yet, it just feels like it definitely wasn't ready. Like there was more shit they intended to do, or more shit they could have done if they had more time. The fact that they got launched with glitches, you know, missing DLC, and even the worst problems that the Nintendo Switch has, it's evidence of itself that it wasn't ready. It had no business releasing in June. So, yeah. But verdict is like 8 out of 10. I definitely recommend this game if you like 2D action platformer games with heavy on RPG elements and good graphics, you know, excellent music for sure, and just a lot of options with how the character plays, just lots of grinding. Another thing that I actually forgot to talk about is the difficulty. Yeah, this is what happens when you don't have a script. Now, I'm just gonna go right ahead and say the game isn't hard, it's very easy. There's a reason why I just went completely... I just opted to go at nightmare mode from the beginning, because I just knew that if I played this on normal at first, it's gonna be too easy for me. It's just the kind of game that it's definitely easier than a game like Order of Ecclesia, and even if it was on the same level as that, when you have a game like this where you can grind, level up, collect loot, collect weapons, you know, shards, abilities, and power them up even further, you know, no matter what you do, you can make the game easy for yourself if you want to. You can just grind, power up your weapons to the maximum, and you know, just everybody's gonna be a piece of cake. You know, there's a reason that even though I'm not the greatest player, I do consider myself a good player, but the reason why I knew that I can do nightmare mode and it won't be a problem even if I'm stuck on level 1 is because I know that if shit gets tough, you can just grind for shards, power up your shards, you know, power up your familiars at their strongest, you know, get more healing items, loot more healing items, all these sorts of things. Oh, and another thing I forgot, familiars there. You get familiars in this game too, like partners, demons that hover around you or just are around you and fight and your enemies and help you fight and help you heal, shit like this. But yeah, I think I'll ramble long enough. I think I'm gonna make another video talking about my Kickstarter experience because I was a backer for this game at a pretty high tier too. So yeah, but for anyone that didn't even back this game, it's even better for you. You can just buy it for $40 and then get the DLC if you want to. Like even if you don't want to get the DLC, for 10 bucks, it's just a boss and an extra weapon. I think that's it. The IGA exclusive content, which isn't exclusive anymore. But you know, for $40, you're definitely getting your money's worth. You know, this game is big as fuck. There's so much content in it. Especially if you like grinding, if you want to get all the weapons, all the stuff, get all the trophies and shit, you're gonna have a lot of content for you to look forward to. And there's multiple DLCs still coming. There's the boss rush mode that's already here, speed rush mode. I didn't play that, and just other DLC that's gonna be coming, like boss revenge mode and some other stuff, online features, other characters to play the game. Zangetsu and I think Shovel Knight, like the Shovel Knight dude, you will play as him. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video review. Hope you guys subscribe, leave a like, and share this video with your friends. This is a Pokemon channel, but this was sort of an exception to what I usually post. I really wanted to get my thoughts out for this game because I'm really passionate about it. So, SaberWolf94, thank you guys for watching. We'll see ya.